Good afternoon. We have a very small technical problem, so we will be starting shortly in about 1 or 2 minutes. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so good afternoon again. I'm very sorry for the delay, for waiting for the room, and now we had a small technical issue which we still have, but we will overcome that soon. I'm told that colleagues following us online can hear us and see us. If not, please do send us a signal if you don't. I would like to warmly welcome you here. We are very happy that we can have this event on the soil of the European Parliament. And with many thanks to the chair of the ENVI committee, Mr. Antonio De Caro, and his team for hosting this event, which is organized by the United Nations Environment Programme. We are marking the 80 years of the UN, but also reminding the normative role of the United Nations. We have had decades of multilateral environmental agreements, including the Vienna Convention for the Protection of the Ozone Layer with 40 years, or 50 years of the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, CITES, 50 years, which we will hear from both conventions. Warm welcome to the panelists. Warm welcome to participants, both yourselves in the room, but also online. We had to do the hybrid version because of the strike today in Brussels, but we very appreciate that you could make it here in person. What we are trying to do today through this debate is to take a snapshot of major global achievements from pollution and health to nature and climate, and discuss the value for the resilience and competitiveness of the multilateral environmental agreements. In challenging times and challenging geopolitical times that we are going through, these serve as an anchor for collaboration. globally agreed norms and standards and their contribution to the real economy, including in the EU, and also what they represent and bring for business, for industry, and for people. You probably have seen a paper, which I will show you here now. There is a QR code, which you will also see on the presentation that will be behind us and on your screens. This paper is summarizing key achievements. It's not everything because there is a whole list, but it just gives a snapshot. I am your moderator for today, so you have to put up with me. My name is Veronika Hunt-Szafranko. I'm head of the Brussels office of UNEP. We will have this event web streamed. It will be also recorded, so colleagues of yours could also watch it afterwards. We will have two panels, global frameworks on pollution and health, actionable solutions for competitiveness and resilience, and we will have another session on the nature and climate commitments at the service of economic sustainability. We will have debate after the two panels, so prepare your questions towards the end. We will have a very dense program with an hour and 15 minutes altogether, so we will be watching the time quite closely. I will not talk anymore myself, but I'm very, very happy that we have Ms. Annalisa Corrado, member of the European Parliament, who will share with us opening remarks and who is the host of our event. So Annalisa, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. I'm really happy and honored to be here, substituting Chair De Caro that expressed the sincere apologies, but unfortunately could not join us today. But we are a team. I'm here, and so we can share also the effort to stay on this important issue, on this important relationship that we think is crucial. For those who braved today's strike and made it to European Parliament, it's a great pleasure to welcome you on this policy debate, and also, of course, for the one who is connecting from the internet. And so to this policy debate on leveraging global environmental cooperation to boost competitiveness and resilience. I would also like to warmly thank the United Nations Environmental Programme for co-organizing this event. At a time of multiple global crises, reaffirming the value of environmental multilateralism is more important than ever. Global environment agreements have built an extraordinary legacy of cooperation, helping not only to protect our planet, but also to drive innovation, stability, competitiveness, and most important, let me say, peace. Even if some political groups argue that climate ambition threatens competitiveness, many industries, cities, regions, stakeholders, and NGOs show the opposite. Sustainability and prosperity go hand in hand. Investing in clean technologies, resource efficiency, and healthy ecosystem is not a cost, is the foundation of long-term growth. For the European Union, linking global environmental goals with socioeconomic resilience lies at the core of our political project, of course, in the framework or SDGs 2030. And for the European Parliament, through its legislative and diplomatic work, it ensures that the EU remains a credible and ambitious partner, playing a vital role in advancing this vision and championing multilateralism worldwide, from the Paris Agreement to the upcoming COP in Belém. The Environmental Committee, in particular, together with many colleagues, has been at the forefront of translating global commitments into concrete European action, protecting the achievements of recent years and demonstrating that green growth is inseparable from innovation, protecting and trying to protect, not always with a good result, but we are on it. Today's debate is a chance to reaffirm that environmental cooperation is not only a moral duty, It is a strategic investment in our shared resilience, prosperity, and future. Thank you, and I wish you a very fruitful discussion.
Thank you very much, Annalisa, and also bringing the innovation angle, which is very important. And now I would like to jump to Nairobi, where we will have opening remarks from the Executive Director of United Nations Environment Programme, Ms. Inge Anderson. So maybe in a moment. Okay, so we will continue. We will continue now. So we will have the opening remarks from Executive Director in a moment, but because we are a little bit squeezed by time, we will go straight to the panel one, and you will give us signal where we can watch the video. We can, okay.
Albeit virtually today, to reflect on our global environmental cooperation, because cooperation lies at the heart of the European Union's agenda. Cooperation that is driving sustainable competitiveness, building resilience, and of course, enabling international partnerships. The EU has been and remains instrumental in this effort, not just regionally, but globally too. And earlier this year, with strong EU support, the world agreed to establish a science policy panel on chemicals, waste, and pollution prevention, creating, as I like to call it, a triplet of panels with the IPCC and the IPBES. Therefore, meaning that we have a panel that addresses each of the three planetary crises: climate change, biodiversity and land loss, and now chemicals and pollution and waste. We also saw a real surge of support for the landmark agreement on biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction treaty that, as we record this, inches closer to ratification and implementation. Now, negotiations continue on a global legally binding treaty to end plastic pollution, and while consensus on a treaty text has not yet been reached, the urgency of tackling plastic pollution remains clear. I commend the EU's leadership in this complex process, and I look forward to your ongoing support so that we can, together, give the world what it wants, and that is an end to plastic pollution. We can't afford to wait any longer, and we have to find a way that we can agree as a global community to settle this text. Today's meeting offers a valuable moment to step back and to consider the broader significance of these efforts. They don't occur in isolation, and we all know this. But through globally agreed norms and standards, we are acting directly together to protect public health, to strengthen economic resilience, to support business sustainability, and to create conditions for investments. And those benefits are really tangible. They're measurable. They're benefiting people and the planet. Our global commitment to protect the ozone layer is projected to yield $1.8 trillion in health benefits, supporting skin cancer and cataract prevention, let alone the climate heating properties of those chemicals. So multilateralism works, but it's hard work, and that's why we have to work together. And we are seeing standards in the chemical sector that promote safety, sustainable production, and help boost industrial competitiveness and supply chain resilience. Another area is, of course, mercury regulations, which have spurred innovation across dentistry, lighting, manufacturing, and artisanal gold mining. The EU continues to advance breakthrough science and sustainable solutions. As we transition our economies, we must remain closely aligned with evolving global norms and standards. UNEP and our family of multilateral environmental agreement, whether close relatives or not, are all well represented in the room today. We together will continue to work hard, hand in hand with EU partners, to deliver results for our people, our businesses, and our planet. I wish you productive discussions ahead. Thank you.
Many thanks to Ms. Anderson for opening the debate for us. She laid out a lot of important messages on environmental multilateralism, and I'm very happy that we can go straight to our panel that will go very much into detail on pollution and health, on actionable solutions for competitiveness and resilience. We have fantastic panelists. I will just say very quickly the names, and then I'll introduce you properly when I'll be passing you the floor. So from my left, Mr. Rolf Paye, Executive Secretary of the Basel, Rotterdam, Stockholm Conventions. Monika Stankiewicz, Executive Secretary of the Minamata Convention. Mr. Vytenis Andriukaitis, a member of European Parliament. And Ms. Chrysanthi Sophocleous, European Industry Council and industry representative of the GFC Bureau. So we will go to the next panel in a moment, but we have now some 15 minutes of discussion. Each panelist will have 5 minutes. And then, as I said, we will have discussion at the very end. But I will now turn to Rolf, as currently the Executive Secretary of the BRS Convention, but also Rolf, with your former experience as a Minister of Environment and Energy of the Republic of Seychelles, and also lead author of the IPCC. You combine many different sectors, the chemicals, waste, but also with the climate inside. So how do you see, Rolf, now the challenges, opportunities, and of course achievements of the multilateral agreements with a specific focus of the BRS?
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for this very interesting panel. And in fact, thank you so much for inviting us and to speak here at the European Parliament building, which is very nice. I want to tackle my presentation this afternoon from 2 angles, and of course, which is clearly on the minds and lips of policymakers, both in Europe and elsewhere around the world. The first one is, do we do multilateralism or nationalism? And the second one is, do we regulate or deregulate? And this fits very squarely into the work that my 3 conventions, for which I'm responsible for, really relate to. First, let's look at multilateralism. And the first topic I want to look at is trade. All the 3 conventions, the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm conventions, are trade-related conventions, which means that they grow out of the need first for Basel to control the transboundary movement of wastes and hazardous wastes. The second one arising from Rotterdam Convention, which is exchange of information on chemicals, industrial chemicals and pesticides in relation to the trade around the world, and the provision of information from producer countries to user countries and so on. And the third one dealing with Stockholm Convention, which is dealing with persistent organic pollutants, which based on the properties of those chemicals can lead to serious health, but also environmental impacts. And as I've said before, the 3 conventions go through a science process where there is discussions from scientists from around the world to justify whether those chemicals meet the criteria established by those conventions. So let's tackle the first issue of trade. And at the last conference of the parties, we had a big issue dealing with a global company who had billions of sales at stake. And that was related to a plastic additive called UV328. And if you go into the records, I won't go into the details, you will see that the discussions would have made or broke the deals that this big international company, which of course has significant billions invested in the work through the work of the Stockholm Convention, where through the process, UV328 was determined to meet the criteria as a persistent organic pollutant. We found a solution, but it sends home the very strong message that we cannot stand isolated because our industry today has globalized. We may not want to globalize, but industry has globalized. And if we try to pull back on this, obviously, If we go back to economics 101, you will know we will lose competition, we will lose competitive advantage. And I was just mentioning to Veronica as we were talking, intellectual property. If you look at a particular product today, let's take a mobile phone, so many components, and some of these intellectual properties might belong to different countries. So how are you going to produce something where the intellectual property belongs to another country, everything within your country? So a lot of reflection needs to go into this discussion. And we see that very clearly in the Chemicals and Waste Convention. The second point is, of course, on circularity. We've been discussing that. I don't think it's theoretical anymore, but looking at circularity is how we deal with our waste. So we are great at producing, we are great at distributing, we are great at consuming, but then when it comes to dealing with the waste, we are not so great at it. And we see many examples where there's dumping of the equipment and everything that we've used in other parts of the world, which creates a global, not a local problem. It initially creates a local problem, but once they start to, for example, a mobile phone, they start to take it apart by burning it to extract the gold and other minerals in some landfill in Africa, for example, all these emissions eventually lines up in Europe. So again, we are not disconnected. And this is where multilateralism helps, because the decisions we take at the conventions, which are legally binding, at the end of the day, puts in place also measures in countries that are distant to us, regulatory capacity building and technology they put in place to also ensure that the quality of life that you want in Europe, nice air, nice water, and nice thing, are also guaranteed. And you cannot preserve this by just looking inside. You have to engage with other countries. Third point, of course, is resource efficiency. And that is also very much related to multilateralism, because no one country has all the resources that it needs to be able to survive, both economically, but also environmentally, as well as health-wise. So which means that it changes the whole dynamics on how you look at things, where you need to think about how making effective use of the resources that we have and that we've been given needs also multilateralism. And this is where my 3 conventions come into place. I know I'm running out of time, but I want to talk about the second point, which is to deregulate or to regulate. And this is a very complex area of work, which, of course, policymakers spend a lot of time dealing with, because if you overregulate, you also increase illegal trade, you make it more profitable, but also if you don't regulate, then you don't create a level playing field for industry to operate, and it's cowboy land. Everybody do what they want, and you end up with markets that are not functioning properly. So the challenge of a policymaker is to regulate just enough to ensure that the market functions effectively. And this, I think, should be the pursuit. It's not about deregulating and regulating, it's to actually effectively, efficiently regulating, but at the same time putting in place measures and processes that are efficient, that do not hurt the market and do not hurt productivity. On the other hand, also ensures the quality of life that we seek for, which is better health, long life, both for children and for the elderly. So at the end of the day, the discussion on where our conventions fit in is, when I joined the convention, I had this huge reflection. Are we at the international level regulating global movement, or are we creating innovation? And I see a bit of both. The basis for having an international treaty is to deal with an environmental issue, which is crossing borders. But at the end of the day, when we start working with the parties, with the conventions, we see creates space for innovation, because when we deal with a particular environmental issue or environmental chemical, which has been shown through science that is not good for us, then it pushes us and pushes industry, pushes everybody to start innovating. So let's turn the narrative around. Let's think of regulation as giving us the opportunity to be better, to innovate better, to create better products for health, for jobs, and for the economy. The second one, of course, is the third one. The final point is on and I've mentioned it before, is on innovation. How do those international conventions help us innovate? And the innovation is not only a national issue. I think it has become a global issue because our supply chains are global. Our business is global. So how do we then engage and put all these building blocks together to ensure that innovation is not operating in isolation, but rather integrated where everybody sees the benefits? So I will stop here, but these are my thoughts on where the three conventions really play an important role in driving competitiveness, but also ensuring resilience in Europe. Thank you.
I have to leave, but I leave you in the very good hands of my colleague, Vitali. So
Thank you
very
so much for joining
Take care.
us.
Ciao.
Thank you, Ro, for your words. I can see that it will be very tough for me to keep to keep the time, but I'm really glad that I let you speak till the end. And thank you for tackling the question of regulate or not regulate and the effective and efficient regulation. Now, turning to Monica. Monica, you are Executive Secretary of the Minamata Mercury Convention, but you also have very rich history behind yourselves, including the Executive Secretary of Baltic Marine Environment Protection Commission, the Helsinki Commission, and before that also other positions in the field of environment. So we bring not only the Mercury angle, but also across the different areas. How do you see the challenges and opportunities?
Thank you so much. And let me start by saying that I'm really honored to be with you today with my distinguished co-panelists. And we are so happy to be hosted in the European Parliament. And of course, a great and big thank you to UNEP. Minamata Convention, as many other multilateral environmental agreements, are hosted and administrated by UNEP. UNEP is our home. My heart beats for fighting mercury pollution and marine environment protection. That's a bit of my background. And shortly about the convention is one of the youngest environmental treaties, global environmental treaties, with a quite effective approach as it covers the entire life cycle of mercury. And some of you may remember maybe playing with mercury that got spilled from a mercury thermometer. That was fun. I wouldn't dare it to do it nowadays, knowing how harmful it is. It has really devastating impact on human health and the environment, and therefore the reason to have a convention like ours in place. I would like to highlight that we are very thankful to the EU and member states for your leadership in our convention. The EU has developed a comprehensive body of legislation covering many aspects of mercury life cycle. And in fact, it did inspire the creation of the Minamata Convention. And this partnership continues with the recent amendments to the convention going hand in hand with the revision of the EU mercury regulation. We have 153 parties. 7 of those are de facto EU candidate countries, and also the number of parties is growing all the time. I would like to reinforce the point that has already been raised, that implementing multilateral environmental agreements and Minamata really establishes a global level playing field. It does boost competitiveness, especially in regions and countries where there are already highly developed and environmental technologies in place, mercury-free technologies. And to give you a concrete example, all fluorescent lamps contain mercury, and they are set to be phased out by 2027. And markets have already shifted to LED, which is so much more energy efficient. And the global ban under Minamata Convention really accelerate this transition. Another example, mercury cell technology, which is one of the oldest chlor-alkali production methods, was discontinued in EU in 2017 when the Minamata Convention entered into force. And parties to the Minamata Convention are required to phase it out in this industry by 2025. So the entire world is catching up with those parties who have already done their innovation and put in place this cleaner technology. Another example, which doesn't have a phase-out date for mercury yet, is a vinyl chloride monomer. It's called VCM. It's really precursor of plastic. And many parties have phased out mercury use in VCM, but not all. And our upcoming meeting of the Conference of the Parties will deliberate whether it can establish that we should move towards phase out. And briefly, other examples, what our convention requires from parties is to regulate emissions from some major industrial sectors by applying best available practices and best available environmental practices, best available techniques. This is very familiar vocabulary to all EU countries who have done it for already some time. And the second point I would like to also make is that multilateral environmental agreements provide a forum to jointly address common challenges. They still exist. One example is, I don't know whether you're aware that mercury is used in cosmetics. It's actually banned both by EU and Minamata Convention to use mercury in skin lightening products, but those products are also available on EU markets and especially through online marketplaces. And I came across recently through what the New York Attorney General has said about this, as they have started some investigation into this issue, that mercury is poison, not a beauty treatment. And you may feel that by now we should be safe. There are no these products on the market, but here you go. And another common challenge is the use of mercury in artisanal small-scale gold mining. This type of gold mining exists in around 80 countries around the world. They produce 20% of gold on the market, and mercury can turn any person into a miner within a day. It's very easy and cheap, but the environmental footprint of that pollution that will be carried over through air over long distances is really huge. There's also a lot of investment and know-how into this type of mining, so it's not really artisanal anymore, really. And there is also, in some areas, close link to organized crime. So it does matter where the gold comes from. And I think these are another example of matter we will be looking together at our upcoming COP. So let me finish and say that within Minamata Convention, we have this saying, let's make mercury history. And I hope that I got your interest to look into mercury matters. And I count, of course, on the leadership of the European parliamentarians and the EU and EU countries within the Minamata Convention. It's really, really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Now we are turning back to the European Parliament. Vytenis, thank you so much for joining us. You are not only a member of the Environment Committee, but you're also coordinator of the Committee on Public Health, Sante, but also former European Commissioner for Health and Food Safety. So we are in very good hands here. So how do you see the importance of these multilateral frameworks from the EU perspective?
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this very important event, And of course, I always ask myself, how can we understand very old slogan, thinking globally and acting locally? When we're speaking about multilateralism, we need to understand, we need to think globally. Why we need conventions, agreements? No, because only one way to have understanding that we will act globally, thinking and locally acting, and very interesting to see. As a former EU Commissioner for Health and Food Safety, and as someone who now works within the both ENVI Committee and Sant Committee, I've seen firsthand how closely our health is tied to the environment around us. And now environment and health are interconnected. Clean air, safe water, healthy soil, and the control of hazards, chemicals, and abstract environmental goals. They are foundations of our health, life expectancy, child development, and disease prevention. Of course, also generational continuity. All the science tells us that some things, exposure to mercury, as I just mentioned, lead or persistent pollutants quietly undermines public health and puts enormous pressure on our healthcare systems and all our economies also. What may sound like a simple truth is In today's political climate, something we must keep repeating, because as debates around climate change, environmental policy, and science grow more polarized as never before, and you know, United Nations are now under permanent attacks, and our agencies are under permanent WHO. Of course, it becomes more important ever to defend evidence-based decisions. And being commissioner, always try to defend evidence-based decisions. We need to step back from narrow party political approaches and look honestly at the state of the world we live in. Only then can we find meaningful answers to global challenges. And by doing so, real solutions for Europe. In an interconnected world, as you just rightly mentioned, absolutely, no region, including the EU, is spared from pollution, chemicals, or waste. No one. These pressures reach every corner on the planet and grow by the day, which means we need global responses. This is where multilateral environmental agreements such as Basel, Rotterdam, Stockholm, or Minamata conventions come in. They are much more than environmental treaties, much more. They are first and foremost public health tools. And if you look, it's public health treaties, if you can understand health as social, mental, and physical well-being. And secondly, the drives are for a fair and sustainable economic competition. And also they can help us to implement sustainable development goals, because all 17 goals are in close relationship. And they are in very close relationship with those conventions. They act as preventive health system on a planetary scale, global common goods that protects us all. Global public goods. We have local public goods, regional public goods, European public goods, and global public goods. Peace is global public goods. And environment and sustainability also. Thanks to this science-based framework, we are stopping mercury from poisoning our food, phasing out pollutants that cause cancer or neurological diseases, and preventing unsafe waste trade that harms communities. At the same time, these agreements create a foundation for fair competition. They set global standards for safer production and trade, and they encourage innovations in clean technologies, circular materials, safer chemicals, Green Deal, circular economy, blue economy. All those economies require innovations, and of course, understanding that we can act in very close cooperation. They help us export high standards, not pollution. Can we understand? Can you send to every businessman, please export high standards, but not pollution. For Europe, that means strengthening our strategic edge in clean technologies and sustainability. It means protecting workers, consumers, and ecosystems while rewarding companies that invest in the future. These conventions don't stand in the way of competitiveness. They make sustainable competitiveness possible. Sustainability, competitiveness, and possibility. Science, health, and innovation form a single triangle. And multilateral frameworks are what hold that triangle together. Yet too often, those global agreements are underfunded and politically overlooked. You know very well, and I am also, how it's difficult to raise public health issues high on the political agenda and environmental issues also. The EU needs to renew its leadership, not just through ambitious internal policies, but also by supporting their implementation around the world. This means integrating global chemicals and waste management into our global health strategies and development cooperation. It means strengthening the science policy link between the United Nations, particularly the United Nations Environmental Programme, and EU institutions. And it means providing more financial and technical support to partner countries to the Global Europe Programme. Our global gateway shouldn't only be about infrastructure. It should also be about investing in science and environmental cooperation. a long-term path that strengthens both our partners' development and European competitiveness. Ultimately, we need one health approach. I like very much one health approach, one health, one environment approach. It sounds like example of thinking globally, because protecting ecosystems and managing pollutants is just as vital to human health as hospitals and vaccines. Europe's credibility as a global health leader depends on our willingness to invest in these multilateral frameworks, our shared insurance policy for a healthier and more sustainable future. Our shared insurance. It's really good emotion. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for your political insight, but also very pragmatic and moral as well. Thank you for this. So now we are going to the industry. Chrysanthi, you are a chemical engineer by training, but you have a very long career, over 20 years in EU regulatory affairs, focusing on chemicals policy. Also member of the product stewardship department at CEFIC, and besides CEFIC role, also active involvement in the International Council of Chemical Associations, and also industry representative to the Bureau of the Global Framework on Chemicals. So how do you see, or can you say some specific examples from the industry perspective? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to start with, thank you for the invitation. It's really a great honor for me to be here today, representing the European Chemical Industry Council, as well as the International Council of Chemical Associations, which is our global umbrella. This is how we engage in global discussions. And thank you also, because that gives me the opportunity to promote a little bit an instrument that is really very close to our heart, and that's the Global Framework on Chemicals. It is a voluntary international instrument, contrary to the BRS conventions and the Minamata conventions, and it's an instrument that looks actually to complement this kind of instruments. It has a very clear, a very ambitious vision, which is a planet free of harm from chemicals and waste. And for us, for the industry, this is about ensuring that the basics, the appropriate foundations for safety and for sustainability are in place everywhere in the world where our products are sold and are used. And this means making sure that we have an adequate legislative framework everywhere, that there is access to information, knowledge of the properties of the chemicals that are in place there, and information on how to use them properly, how to dispose them properly, and so on. And what makes the Global Framework on Chemicals so special, and what ensures our very active involvement in it, is its multi-sectoral and multi-stakeholder nature and approach. The idea is bringing together governments, industries, NGOs, the civil society, to share the responsibility and to work jointly towards 5 strategic objectives and 28 specific time-bound targets. And the very first objective actually is very relevant, because it's about putting in place the legal frameworks and the institutional capacities needed for the safe and sustainable management of chemicals everywhere. This is foundational for the industry as well. Many countries lack still such systems or capacities, and the gaps need to close. Getting it right at the EU level is not enough, because indeed supply chains are global and chemicals are transboundary. And the chemical industry is committed to helping closing these gaps. And we have actually pledged to support 30 countries in this effort, 30 developing countries by 2030. One example of such an effort is a pilot project we are co-sponsoring with the European Union to expand the implementation of GHS, that's the globally harmonized system for classification and labeling of chemicals, in 4 African countries, in Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, and Cote d'Ivoire. And through this pilot project, these countries are being guided to improve the management of chemicals through better classification and labeling of hazards. We have also donated 1.5 million euros so far to the Global Framework on Chemicals Fund, which has been created to support developing countries in implementing the framework. And we would very much encourage other players as well to consider aligning it with their own development priorities to make sustainable impact. Another key objective I wanted to refer to briefly is about safer alternatives and sustainable solutions in product value chains. And our industry is responding to this one as well by rethinking our portfolios and processes and steering them towards sustainability. And this goes beyond safety. It's about sustainability. It's about staying within the planetary boundaries. And while Europe is very rightly so considered a leader in sustainability, we need to share and leverage our best practices and our lessons in other regions. And we are trying to help with this as well. We are at this moment trying to create the practical tools to support our companies, including at the management level, in improving sustainability performance. And the final objective of the Global Framework on Chemicals I wanted to highlight, that's B, and it's about making available and accessible that the data that is necessary to enable informed decisions, science-based decisions, evidence-based decisions are there. And this has also inspired us to take action. And we are working on finding the means to provide better access to the data on the safety and sustainability of our own products. And here again, we see an opportunity to support other regions with such science-based data by leveraging, for example, the huge amount of rich data we have generated and reusing them in other regions if we can. To conclude, we are very much focused on implementing the Global Framework on Chemicals right now, already looking ahead to the first international conference that is planned for in about a year. And at the same time, as mentioned already by others, we are also navigating a period of great turbulence and uncertainty, including regulatory uncertainty. And this kind of uncertainty presents many challenges for industry, including, for instance, with strategic planning. And this is another reason that makes the Global Framework on Chemicals so valuable. It provides for the vision, the roadmap, and it ensures that we remain focused on what matters the most to continue to contribute to a healthier, safer, and more sustainable world. And from a pure EU perspective, it's also about leveraging our experience and the lessons we have learned with chemical managements in other regions. And last but not least, it's about demonstrating that it is possible to work together, industry with regulators, with civil society, with NGOs, work together and achieve tangible progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your positive words, and we need to hear from you from the industry, and great to hear that you also see opportunities in this space. We are moving to the next panel now, which is, but please do stay here, this side of the panel, but we are moving to nature and climate commitments. Tony, do you want to join us here? Or yeah, you can already. Yeah, but you can join us here already. But we will start with 3 speakers for the moment, looking at the nature. We will have Ms. Yvonne Higuero, the Secretary General of the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, CITES, who is joining us online. We have Ms. Manuela Ripa, Member of the European Parliament. Thank you very much. And we have Françoise van de Ven, President of the ATIPT, and it's a very complicated name, International Tropical Timber Technical Association, right? So also we have a representative of industry on this panel. Again, there will be 5 minutes for each intervention, and I'm going to turn to Yvonne. I do hope that we have a connection working. Okay, but I can see Yvonne. Yvonne is actually one of our victims of the strike who wanted to be here in person, but the flight was cancelled. So I'm very happy that we have you at least online, Yvonne, connecting from Geneva. Yvonne has very long experience as environmental economist, over 26 years in international organizations, in senior leadership across the UN system, besides UNEP, in sustainable development, biodiversity, trade, environmental governance, and many other things. So Yvonne, like I asked previously, how do you see the challenges, opportunities, and achievements of CITES and nature as a whole? Over to you.
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. Dear Veronica, I do hope you can hear me.
Very well.
Very good, because I can hear you very well too. And yes, I'm very sorry that I was not able to join you physically there in person, but it was really because of the emergency of the strike. So good afternoon to all. It is an honor to join you today and a privilege to be part of this distinguished panel. I would like to first sincerely thank Mr. Antonio De Caro, who I know is not there right now, but very much appreciate the invitation and organizing this event with our colleagues from the UNA Brussels office and for inviting me. As we all know in the CITES Secretariat, the European Union is a very important CITES party and is very committed to the sustainable management of wildlife in its member states and by the long-standing financial support that it provides to CITES. The EU and its member states have invested tens of millions of euros in CITES key initiatives. It is also wonderful to be in this event with my dear colleagues who lead other conventions and are my partners in advancing global environmental cooperation, as we have already heard from my colleagues, Monica and Rolf. Now, warm greetings also to my fellow panelists, the Honorable Manuela Ripa, Member of Parliament, and to Ms. Françoise Van de Ven, President of the ATIBT. And the ATIBT is one of our partners playing a vital role working with parties promoting sustainable forest management and responsible trade practices in the tropical timber industry. This is highly relevant for my intervention, focusing on CITES contributions to sustainable development by conserving animals and plants in the wild for future generations. As many of you are probably aware, the aim of CITES is to ensure that trade in wild plants and animals and any product derived from them is sustainable, legal, and traceable, and that certain conditions for trade are fulfilled before the trade is authorized. Further, what's very important for the convention is that it places a joint responsibility on both producer and consumer parties to manage this wildlife trade sustainably and, very importantly, prevent and combat any illegal trade. Now, looking at sustainable development and contributions to economy, for example, I would like to highlight how this international trade in wildlife contributes to the global economy and human well-being with a few examples. Firstly, let me talk about the African cherry tree and bitter aloe, which are plants. And I like to talk about plants because sometimes I think we talk a little bit too much about the iconic species and large mammals, which are, of course, very important. But when we look at trade and the significant trade and the economic contributions and livelihood contributions, plants really have a major role in that. So with the African cherry tree and bitter aloe, they are the most highly traded and valuable medicinal plant species listed in CITES, with reported trade volumes of 10,700 and 4,500 tons respectively between 2013 and 2023. And these are just two of almost 1,300 medicinal plant species listed in the CITES appendices. Now, the overall annual trade value of products derived from medicinal aromatic plants included in CITES is a whopping more than $3 billion. Even more importantly, these species contribute directly to the health of up to 80% of populations in many developing regions. Now, if we look at the trade in reptile skins, particularly python and crocodile species in Southeast Asia, it is estimated to be worth approximately $1 billion annually, supporting global fashion and leather industries, while at the same time requiring robust traceability and sustainability measures. CITES now is also increasingly regulating international trade in commercially harvested marine and timber species. The convention now covers over 900 timber species, up from just 18 in 1975, a huge difference in the last 50 years, and includes many shark and ray species. Many of you have probably heard many proposals to list these species for sustainability in the CITES appendices, as well as corals and other marine life. Now let's look beyond economic value. Let's look at the livelihood benefits of trade in CITES listed species, which are very significant. They support economic, ecological, and social sustainability, including food security, health, and income generation. For example, the trade in wild-collected snowdrop bulbs in Georgia involves approximately 15 million bulbs annually, generating an estimated $24,000 for harvesters in rural areas. This is about 7 times the average annual salary in Georgian cities. Now, crocodile harvest and trade have supported extensive livelihood benefits for Aboriginal and other rural communities in Australia, while also supporting species recovery and habitat conservation. The economic value of the crocodile farming industry just in the Northern Territory has been estimated to be more than $74 million. This also creates jobs in remote rural areas where other jobs may be scarce. Now, these examples underscore the importance of CITES not only as a conservation tool, but as a practical instrument for advancing sustainability, supporting livelihoods, and building resilience across regions and sectors. Today, the value of participation in multilateral environmental agreements is greater than ever. We have been talking a lot about multilateralism, but now that we see that we are now in a fragmented world, these MEAs offer a trusted space, firstly for science-based decision-making and coordinating action, as well as building consensus. CITES as a treaty stands as a pillar of environmental multilateralism. It is a standard-setting agreement that has, as you mentioned earlier, Veronica, it celebrates its 50th birthday, and during this time has provided a solid framework to ensure wildlife trade is sustainable, legal, and traceable. I'd like to close by welcoming you to the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to CITES that will be held in Samarkand, Uzbekistan in November, where a total of 51 proposals for CITES listings have been submitted. And we would very much like to continue our collaboration with the European Union to advance both ambition, but also implementation, the most important part of the MEAs, ensuring that trade and wildlife supports a more resilient and sustainable future for both people and planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. And we are going back to the European Parliament. Manuela, you serve both on the ENVI committee and the Sante committee, very much contributing for a long time to EU policy on public health, climate and food safety. And you will also lead the European Parliament delegation to CITES COP20 that Yvonne was referring to. So can I turn to you? How do you see the priorities in this area?
Thank you very much, Veronica, for the kind introduction, and thank you very much for having me here today. And I will start with one thing, that when we speak about Europe's future, we often divide our ambitions into separate rooms, one for nature and climate, and the other one for growth, competitiveness, and economic reform. But the truth is, these rooms share the same foundation. Without a healthy environment, there is no sustainable economy. And without an economy aligned with ecological reality, there can be no lasting prosperity. According to the latest report of the European Environment Agency, Europe's environment is in critical conditions. The report confirms on the one side that the EU remains a global frontrunner in cutting greenhouse gas emissions, reducing the use of fossil fuels and expanding renewable energy. But despite significant progress in cutting emissions and improving air quality, the agency warns that Europe's nature faces increasing pressure from overexploitation, biodiversity loss, and the accelerating impacts of climate change. It is encouraging that the Executive Vice President of the European Commission states that protecting nature is not a cost, but an investment in competitiveness, resilience, and citizens' well-being. So protecting nature is protecting our economy. What is missing is that we act accordingly. The other day, I met a German astronaut from my constituency. It was Matthias Maurer. I asked him what it feels like to see Earth from space. He told me, "You are trained to live peacefully with other people in a spaceship for months. You have to make peace with each other and with your own spaceship, because if you don't, you endanger everyone." And then he said something I can only agree with. Earth is also a spaceship with 8 billion astronauts. But unlike in space, people down here do war against each other and against their own spaceship. These words stayed with me because they show that we are all crew members, responsible for each other, responsible for the survival of this blue planet. And protecting biodiversity and combating climate change thus require strong multilateral cooperation with the European Union and with our global partners. At the same time, our domestic frameworks, our domestic economic frameworks must be modernized to better reflect the realities of our natural environment. They need to be flexible enough to ensure that we do not exceed the planetary boundaries. We have big tasks ahead of us. And that's why I was a little bit angry last week in plenary in Strasbourg, because it didn't seem so. We were discussing if a veggie burger should be named veggie burger. This sends completely wrong signals in two ways. First of all, we have bigger problems to focus on. And second, we are stifling a market here that has growth potential. Why don't we promote it instead? As the EU, we could even become a significant exporter of innovative protein products. Why not foster that? But burgers aside, we need to recognize that restoring ecosystems is an environmental expense. It's not an environmental expense, but a strategic economic investment. Wetlands store water and carbon more efficiently than any technology. Healthy soils are the foundation of our food security. Forests regulate the climate and protect communities from floods and droughts. Almost 5 billion euros of the Union annual agricultural output is directly attributed to insect pollinators. Every euro spent on nature restoration can yield 8 euros or more in social and economic returns, in avoided damage, in clean water, in better health. And if we accounted for these benefits properly, our budget debate would look very different. We must recognize the immense value that biodiversity holds for us. And I'm very honored to sit on the panel together with Yvonne Higuero, the Secretary General of CITES. And she remembered us that the global CITES agreement, was just turned 50, remains our sharpest tool in the fight against species extinction worldwide. Mrs. Higuero, I will follow your invitation. Thank you very much for this. And I'm looking very much forward to seeing you in Samarkand this November. As already mentioned, together with my colleague from the SD, I will lead the delegation to the CITES COP20 of the European Parliament, and we will have strong positions from the European Parliament with us. I will be happy to present them, and I hope we will have a strong outcome of the conference. This is crucial for us all. So how can we do more to reconcile nature and economy? The EU should support member states by providing the right incentives and tools. First, fiscal policies should evolve to include natural capital. Second, programs like the Green Deal Industrial Plan and InvestEU must prioritize investments and drive sustainability while respecting market principles. A promising innovations could be the nature credits or biodiversity credits. They aim to mobilize private capital for the protection and restoration of ecosystems, much like carbon markets that did for climate action. The idea is very simple. Companies can voluntarily contribute to nature conservation and make biodiversity part of their business model. However, enthusiasm must be matched with caution. Poorly designed credits could risk becoming symbolic gesture rather than real solutions. Markets for nature must not repeat the mistake of voluntary carbon markets, where many certificates turned out to have little climate value. That is why nature credits must be seen as a contribution, not an excuse. They can complement strong environmental law, but not replace it. And we cannot afford that nature becomes the luxury of the future. We must preserve it now before scarcity turns into natural beauty, into privilege. I will conclude. I know I'm running over time. So this will be the decade of where we have to be decisive. We are facing a cascade of potentially catastrophic tipping points for biodiversity, but there is still time to act, both in Europe and globally. To succeed, we must coordinate policies across finance, environment, agriculture, innovation, and trade, because the question is not whether we can afford to protect our environment, the question is whether we can not afford it. And I'm very sorry that I have to leave after my intervention because I'm hosting an event to reduce pesticides in our agriculture. That is also very important for biodiversity. But thank you very much for inviting me. My office is present and they will tell me about the outcome of this conference.
Thank you very much. And it's my great pleasure to welcome Commissioner Jessica Roswell, Commissioner for Environment, Water Resilience and Competitive Circular Economy. Commissioner, you are like Swiss clock. You are very much on time. And we are a little bit delayed, but I will swap place with you and then we will continue with our panel. Thank you. Don't I can sorry. Thank you very much, distinguished guests, honorable members, colleagues and friends. And I also want to start with saying thank you to the Environmental Committee and the UN Environment Programme for gathering us here today. I also want to thank already all the speakers for, I'm sure that it's been going to be very insightful contributions. Unfortunately, I have not been listening and I will not listen afterwards. I'm very embarrassed, but I'm running to different meetings today. But I would anyway share a little bit of my takeaways, what I think you have been talking about and will talk about. First, we are living through geopolitical and environmental challenges that are testing our societies, our economies, and our ecosystems. Second, the greatest challenge facing us from all of them, from climate change and biodiversity loss to escalating conflicts and economic turmoil, are shared ones. And of course, they also demand shared solutions. Environmental multilateralism is the key to a more competitive and sustainable future. And this has been one of my guiding principles since I began in this role. I have personally invested in ensuring that we lead by example in the engagement in multilateral level. My first mission as an EU commissioner was to Riyadh and the UN Desertification Convention, the COP. And my first meeting as an EU commissioner was with an EU coordination meeting. And last August, I joined the negotiations for the plastic treaty, pushing for an impact agreement. And let me also take this opportunity to say that I was disappointed by the result. Last month, I was in UNGA in New York. Personally, the reason for that was to participate in important discussions on biodiversity and on water resilience, and also to build new bridges with UN colleagues. And yesterday, I came back from Cairo, from their Water Week, to continue the discussions with international partners to prepare for the preparation for the next year's UN Convention on Water. So as you see, I'm fully invested in this, and it will continue. I will continue this global and multilateral collaboration during my mandate, because the environmental degradation and climate change are not waiting. Our economies and our economic markets are not waiting. Our planet cannot afford wait, and neither can the younger generation or our future generations. So we need to act now. Today, we need to act decisively, we need to act collectively and strategically, and the EU is determined to lead the way. And this goes beyond setting regulation within our borders. It involves forging global partnership, shaping international agreement, and providing the collective action that collective action also turns ambition into action. And in today's uncertain world, many countries are pulling down the shutters or putting up walls. We, the EU, are doing the very opposite.
we will stay the course on multilateralism. As a partner to 30 multilateral environmental agreements, the EU is committed to developing and implementing frameworks to tackle emerging threats. However, environmental negotiations are sometimes becoming geopolitical battlegrounds. Environmental action is sacrificed under the altar of political expediency, or dismissed under false assumption that it does not impact security. We need to protect environmental discussions, and that means prioritizing science-driven and evidence-based policies. And the recent establishment of the Intergovernmental Science Political Panels on Chemicals, Waste and Pollution is one example of what we can achieve if and when we work together. We also need to convince citizens and partners worldwide that the global environment cooperation doesn't only benefit birds and trees, it also unlocks concrete economic opportunities for our societies. Boosting competitiveness and economic resilience is a key priority for this Commission, and it absolutely goes hand in hand with environmental action. Indeed, your discussions today highlighted the economic value, including cost savings through investments in nature-based solutions and adaptation to climate-related risks, new markets for sustainable products and services, and also inclusive sustainable growth that leaves no one behind. As an example, shifting towards a competitive circular economy can unlock major economic opportunities while safeguarding our planet. And recognizing the economic value of environmental action can also help bring actors on board. As an example, also going back to when I was disappointed on the plastic pollution treaty, one thing is that we need to rethinking the way that we produce and how we also use plastic, but that doesn't mean that we bringing down entire sectors or economies. Instead, it means it provides opportunities for innovation and the development of alternatives while delivering major benefits both for human health and for the environment. So, dear friends, environmental actions, economic resilience, and socio-economic reforms are deeply connected. Boosting one strengthens the other, and together they lead to a more sustainable, more resilient, and healthier future for our economies, for our people, and also for our people. So I would say that we cannot think of a more worthy goal, and it will be my guide in the future on continue with multilateral outreach and also multilateral collaboration. That is the way forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I know that you have been torn today between different meetings. I will come back to the main table, but not to lose time. I would like to give the floor now to Françoise, with very long experience in forest timber sector, in business management, but also national associations before being elected as the president of ATIBT. Experience both from Belgium, but also from Africa. So Françoise, can I turn to you and then I will join you there. Could you reflect on the business case for investment in nature in the EU, but also in the world? Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor and for inviting me. And so give me also the opportunity to present our association, which is in French a little bit easier to explain, to pronounce, ATIBT. But the translation in English is actually the International Tropical Timber Technical Association. So we express our appreciation, but also our concerns on how to boost competitiveness and resilience, particularly from the timber from the Congo Basin. For more than 40 years, forests of the Congo Basin have been subject to extensive research and monitoring by universities, by research centers, and a wide range of experts, and mainly with French funds, but also European funds. The results of this research have been used in national legislations and implementation procedures in each country in this region to ensure sustainable exploitation. And also these legislations became the base also for sustainable forest management standards like FSC and PEFC, two certification brands which ATIBT supports and promotes. Our association is working closely with FSC and PEFC in perspective of the entry into force of the European Union Deforestation Regulation, which is with the aim, of course, to making it easier for certified companies to implement the requirements and the procedures in their companies, and also facilitate the due diligence for their customers, as both standards, FSC and PEFC, are under the EUDR considered as useful tools to perform the due diligence. So our association has been reinforcing for 2 or 3 years now the capacity building for the Congo Basin countries through the organization of regional workshops and webinars for the elaboration of the non-detrimental findings and the legal acquisition finding reports, requirements of the CITES Convention for the follow-up on trade in species listed in Annex 2. Requirements which also have become more challenging than in the past. So these NDFs don't resemble anymore as the ones we used to make 10 years ago. Some species actually on the Annex 2 list have been listed on this during the CITES Cup in Panama in 2022. And although some of them are not really threatened, and for one is just because the species is a look-alike with another species, they are considered to be vulnerable and put on the Annex 2 list. So today there are, of course, sufficient methods, and which has also been funded a lot with the EU to identify the timber with DNA, with isotopes. A lot of methods are there. So look-alike should not be a reason to put it on Annex 2, because afterwards we will see that should it be a good thing to be on Annex 2 to protect the species and to follow up the trade, it will become a problem. So CITES permits should be an advantage for trade, as it was also in the past. And European importers were actually happy to import timber under a CITES license. But the EU has imposed unilaterally, on top of all the things, the regulations that are there, and also what is in the convention, domestic measures. And these measures are, the first one were totally unilaterally, and they are more stringent and sometimes really unrealistic. And the delay in delivering the CITES import authorities can take months and even sometimes not be favorable at the end. So one can imagine the negative socio-economic impact in the producing countries on especially the workers that are laid off because they cannot do certain species anymore, and the discouragement which follows of European importers not to buy or to purchase tropical timber anymore, especially not those who are on Annex 2 lists from CITES. So it is to be noted that there will still be a trade in these species, and it will go to continents which are happy, or countries which are happy with the convention requirements and not put domestic measures in place. But one might also think that could be a problem at the end, because less demanding, maybe in 10 years' time, it will be needed to demand, but not today. So EUDR, CITES, FSC certification, PEFC certification, these are all provisions and tools, and they must be applied to stimulate exactly the competitiveness and the resilience for the trade, and not to be a stumbling block. That is our real preoccupation, because we see on the field what is happening. So last, I would like to confirm that our association is in favor of the EUDR, but there are still requirements where practical solutions need to be found so that the regulation can be implemented in an easy way for export and import. Let's make sure that tropical forests continue to play their part in the fight against climate change by supporting the chain of custody with a mutual respect of all parties, and avoid adding a multitude of requirements, and this thus undermining competitiveness and resilience for the trade. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Françoise. And we are swiftly moving to the very last part, and we have to be very short because we are being told that we need to finish soon, but we will talk about ozone. We will have Executive Secretary of the Ozone Secretariat, Meg Secchi, online. I hope she's still there. We have Johannes Auer, Head of Product-Related Environmental Protection at Siemens AG, and we have Tony Agotha, EU Special Envoy for Climate and the Environment. And you will also, Tony, have the privilege to do the concluding remarks if you so that's the bonus point.
Well, everyone's gone.
But no, we have lots of people online.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So don't worry, we have audience. But let me start, actually, if you allow us, we would start with industry now. I would like to pass the floor to Johannes. Johannes, you have been working for over 15 years in eco-design, life cycle and assessment, environmental product declarations within Siemens. But you also contributed to European standardization processes and led several publications, scientific publications. So can you tell us how you see the technological solutions that the industry brings into this? And over to you.
Yeah, thanks first for having me here in this panel, and also thanks also for this occasion itself, because I think it's all in great to have this discussion on multilateralism in context to a political instability, especially on these conditions. Siemens itself, I hope it's not me. Huh? Siemens technology, no?
No, we have some background noise. Please turn off your microphones, except Johannes, of course.
Good. Siemens AG itself, yeah, kind of a technology powerhouse where we drive sustainability as well as also on the course of competitiveness, where we show basically that it goes hand in hand. Also with a long track record on sustainability, basically starting with worker safety, 1847 with the founding of the Siemens AG, quite important topic, as well as leading to having an environment protection department 50 years ago, already starting with multilateral regulations that came into place to take account in this. So in generally, when we look at this, and I can only second what has been said on how important it is for a level playing field that, you know, these regulations are negotiated on this high level and then take into effect in surveillance to give us the chance also to stay competitive in all areas. But generally, we drive such let's say regulations because we take them as a global standard, drive them to the factories, we deal, so which means on the ODSs to phase them out respectively, substitute them and take care, and it doesn't matter. So where in the end we take this as a global standard and for us monitoring as said also on emissions. All in also for us to understand, or in that sense to understand important thing, thriving societies. We heard this also, we heard the planetary boundaries also for us, kind of where we look at when we derive actions to improve products process itself. Done first exercises on how to include such absolute sustainability assessments into our developments, looking at the products, which is very interesting. Coming back to the point, the key aspect is sharing principles. How do we divide this bucket? To us, to others, how we deal with these measures, but at least interesting to see, understand, and work in these contexts. And we came to the backbone of such regulations we think should be science-based, evidence-based, risk-based, quite important. And this gives us a hand with data. You can work and then you take the proper action to really be effective and also efficient in that sense. We also see, because we had this discussion internally now, that climate change seems to be gone somehow in the discussion. Well, it isn't. For us as a company, we look at mega trends, we look in a longer perspective than 4 years political turns and cycles. And then we see the growth of populations, a growth of affluence, as well as climate change and the environmental pressure leading. And that means there is the opportunity for innovation. We heard that also, but we need to look to find solutions. And then that's our stake then basically to identify on various industries, solutions, technology, as sustainable as possible, because it's always like you're running behind, but a little bit to improve these situations step by step. Coming to the regulations itself, just to highlight what's important for us from our perspective, the alignment itself globally is as good as possible, as far as possible. It should be consistent. I wrote that down to remember, and it gives us a predictability, right? So we need a secure environment for investments to target forward, and all this back and forth discussion. Now we reshape this and that in a different direction. Well, it's often not so helpful, but a little bit tricky. For sure, we need to be agile, how it's called now, and react on new situations. Yeah, but in general, we shouldn't move too far away from stuff we already has been decided and agreed upon and working towards. So seen, and this was the example also with the ozone depleting substance or F-gas regulations, right? We need to switch products here. Also to understand, it sometimes takes some time to, develop a new technology without, using then instead of F-gas, you need a PFAS or something, but to find something which is really sustainable. So it takes some time. We are back into the predictability. I'm looking at it, but it drives innovation. It doesn't matter, decarbonization, energy efficiency, reduction of these impacts, which gives us a chance also for growing further in a sustainable way. Good. Back a little bit, just to say what I think on good regulations to be considered somehow. Yeah, I think I like a transparent process all in these discussions where we have the EUP, then ERP, now ESPR, you have a stakeholder dialogue, also REACH, there's a process behind, which is fine. Science risk-based, we manage. I think that's important for understanding and not mitigate something with something which has, again, specific downsides to it. And that leads then to effectiveness and efficiency. What I often miss a little bit, B2B versus B2C discussions. It's totally different markets, environments. Yeah, when we talk circular economy, we have long lifetimes. You don't make no business without repair, warranties and such. It's different than in a faster technology market. So to distinguish and keep then also an eye on it, how we do with it. Yeah, and principally all in, that would be my probably 5 minutes. Roundabout.
Thank you so much. Very great to hear the very practical examples, and I would love to comment on more, but I will do that afterwards when we will talk bilaterally. But turning to Nairobi now, I don't know if we still have Meg Seki, Executive Secretary of the Ozone Secretariat, with us. Meg, can you share your views? And I'm afraid that you have 2 minutes only. Sorry for that, but over to you.
Thank you very much, Veronica. The connection here in Nairobi seems to be really bad. So I have not been able to hear very much of all the great presentations that have been made so far. And I might disappear at any time because the connection keeps dropping. But I will try anyway. Shall I? Okay,
we
anyway.
hear you for the moment.
Yes, but if I'm just dropping, then just cut me off, please. So thank you very much for this opportunity today to reflect on the Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer, which is a very successful multilateral environmental agreement. So since its adoption in 1987, the protocol has achieved amazing results. So today I wanted to focus on the achievements and the benefits of the protocol, but maybe I'll try to do so without getting into too much numbers and statistics. So the Montreal Protocol is successful because the ultimate objective of protecting the ozone layer, fixing the ozone hole is being achieved. The Montreal Protocol controls production and consumption of ozone-depleting substances, and over 99% of those substances have been phased out, and the ozone layer is on path to recovery. So protecting the ozone layer has protected human health and all life on Earth from harmful UV radiation. And that means that on human health, hundreds of millions of cases of skin cancers and eye cataracts have been prevented around the world, and damages to DNA and immune systems have been avoided. By safeguarding crops, livestock, and fish, food security has been protected, and materials such as in buildings have also been guarded from deterioration from excessive UV radiation. By protecting ecosystems, nature and biodiversity have also been preserved. In economic terms, I think this was already mentioned by Inga in the beginning, about 1.8 trillion US dollars have been saved in health costs, and an estimated 460 billion US dollars have been saved by avoiding damages to agriculture, fisheries, and materials. So the contribution of the Montreal Protocol to slowing climate change is very significant. In terms of temperature, up to 1 degree centigrade of warming will have been prevented by 2050 from ODS phase out, and additional maybe up to 1 degree centigrade of warming will have been avoided by 2100 from protection of plants that are vital carbon sinks. Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol is expected to add another 1 degree centigrade avoidance in warming by 2100 through HFC phase down and associated energy efficiency enhancements. Kigali Amendment has opened up renewed opportunities in energy efficiency, especially in the cooling sector, where HFCs are being used as refrigerants. There is enormous potential to maximizing efficiency in the refrigeration and air conditioning systems and equipment. And in economic terms, this saving in actual building of new plants to produce energy represents a saving of 2 to 3 trillion US dollars by 2050. So the Montreal Protocol has been quite successful, and there are several factors behind the success, but I won't go into them. I love to talk about, the factors behind the success, but maybe another day. And what I would like to emphasize is that from the very beginning of the Montreal Protocol, the strong partnership among all the stakeholders was really prevalent. So it is possible to work in partnership among nations, developed and developing, industry, scientific community, and civil society to find solutions to global problems and cooperate to implement those solutions. At this time, when multilateralism is struggling, not only the Montreal Protocol, but MEAs in general are symbolic of what can be achieved when governments look beyond domestic priorities and work together to collectively address global issues with a spirit of collaboration and compromise. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Meg. And straight to Tony. Tony, you are a very experienced diplomat from national and European level, and you are at the negotiating table. So how would you conclude all this discussion? What would you?
1 minute.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. So no, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I've heard so much. I am particularly chuffed that we have politicians, we have the industry, we have diplomats, policymakers, because basically my main message would be is that in the old thinking, climate action is to protect the planet, like environmental action. Industrial policy is about making sure the economy works, and defense is protecting our borders. That old thinking has to die as quickly as possible, because all these things are linked together intrinsically. So the EU tries to do this. We do not for the planet. The planet will survive. It survived for 4 billion years before we came. It will survive long as it gets rid of us. We do it for us and all those generations that come after us. We do it for jobs, and we've heard about it. We do it for our health, and we do it for our security. And what I think is very important in this day and age, we don't only have a fraying a global order, which means how important it is that the EU and others stand up for multilateralism, because ultimately, and I loved the thing that Manuel Ripa just said, the Earth is a spaceship. We are all crew members. So it means we got to work together. So that's one thing. The other thing that is important is that we are at the apex of our technological ability and knowledge, and at the same time, we see a growing modern mysticism on our social media, which I am afraid, is a toxic brew. And I've heard today a couple of times about the importance of science-based, evidence-based research and policymaking. Now, how does the EU do it? And I'm proud of this. We are guided by science and we are led by democracy, because trade-offs have to be made to make sure we go on. But again, the synergies are important. On defense and climate and security, I just was in Montreal for a climate and security conference, and there was a very inspiring speech by the Canadian Defense Minister, McGuinty, so unsuspect a corner, who basically said, nature is not just life. Well, I would say nature is also a strategic priority for our defense when it comes to our waters, when it comes to our air, when it comes to soil, when it comes to pollination. Without that, we cannot sustain life. And it's also part of our security strategy. And so I think that's very important. So on that final note, we just heard how successful the Montreal Protocol was. And this is something I hope you take away with it, because in this day and age, despair can come over us. You read the headlines and it's all bad, bad, bad. But you know what? The world came together and solved the ozone layer. It can be done. Paris, 10 years ago, we started hurtling towards a 4-degree dystopian world. 10 years later, if everyone fulfills the commitments, it would be 2.1 degree. That's not enough. But what it shows that the world can do this, it can come together, it can devise policies. And then finally, you see the market. We see that the market is internalizing this. We spoke about predictability, so important. We should deliver predictability and not waffle. But companies are investing because they see where the money can be earned. And once the market internalizes this, there is no stopping the transition in the interest of our jobs, of our economy, our health, our security, and life itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tony, and nothing to add to that. You wrapped it up beautifully. Yes, and very disciplined. Thank you so much. And thanks to all of these wonderful panelists. It was a great pleasure to have you here, and we hope to continue discussing after this as well. Thank you, participants, for being here, but also online. Thank you for your patience. Also, I know that we ran over time, not our fault entirely, but also logistics. But thank you for being with us. And we will also follow up by some takeaway messages that we will share with you electronically. So thank you and have a good day.
Can I please invite everyone to leave the room? There is another meeting starting shortly. Thank you.
Hello, Yasmina. Yep, I can hear you. I can see you. Can you just speak a bit more? Sorry. Yeah. Maybe a bit up. Yeah. Should be. Yeah. It's okay. Perfect. Thank you. We can start with the languages. We have German. English.
English, 1 to English.
We have French. Yeah. Italian. Yeah. Spanish. Yep. Portuguese. Hungarian.
Hungarian. Yep. Polish. Yeah. Bulgarian. Yeah. And Romanian. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you guys. Thanks so much.